What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another matchups breakdown here on DraftKings TV. I'm Socrdave, David Kitchen. Joining me is Adam Levitan. Adam, I think I've been saying your name actually wrong. It's Levitan, right?
Yeah, like you went to the beach and got a tan, but
Yeah.
I wasn't about to correct you because I love you.
Okay, yeah, and I love you too. But like, I've been hearing your name like every time I'm saying his name wrong. Adam Levitan.
I just figured that's the way people in Tennessee talk. What do I know?
I was trying to make it more fancy. Like, I'm David Kitchen. So I've got Andrew Wiggins and also Peter Jennings with me. Guys, how's it going?
Good.
Real good.
Good. Broncos won last night. That was exciting.
And there was actually more fantasy goodness in that game than I thought. I had Broncos D. I know a lot of people had Emmanuel Sanders. And, man, what about that last play, Pete? You were at the game.
No, I wasn't I thought it was in Denver initially when we were in Miami, and it was in Kansas City, so I did not go to the game. But, yeah, that was one of the most exciting finishes. Obviously, everyone was saying Peyton Manning was done, and then he drove them down the field, and they got a touchdown. I was kind of getting ready for overtime. I actually stood up, and I come back to the TV, and I see the Broncos recovering the ball and scoring a touchdown. So 2 TDs in like the last 30 seconds, and Broncos win.
Yeah, it was definitely nice. Adam, your thoughts just on how Peyton Manning looked last night?
I still think he's done. I'm not going to overreact to one drive. I had the take that Peyton was done all off season, and especially with the way that the Broncos want to play this year, which is run the ball and bleed the clock and play defense. It's not going to be statistically friendly for Peyton going forward, no matter what he did on that last drive.
Guys, another huge.
I got to get in there before we get any other talk here. Did you see once they went to the shotgun when they went back to the Peyton Manning offense?
But do you think they're going to stick with that?
Of course. Look what are they going to stick with? Oh, let's run the ball, get a yard every time, and get Peyton Manning sacked. Or let Peyton Manning do what he does, where they scored 3 touchdowns offensively against a good defense in Kansas City.
Listen,
it's outrageous to say he's done.
If you were coaching the Broncos, I'd have more optimism.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Look at the way he played at the end of that game.
He's running for his life, though. It's not just about his noodle arm. It's also about that offensive line.
The offensive line is problematic. But we have 10 days to kind of get things squared away. And, Adam, week 3 against Detroit, he's going to put up some big numbers.
Yeah, that's definitely a good spot. I'll say that.
All right. We've got a huge week 2 again as far as another $2 million to first, $1 million to second, $10 million milli maker. We thought that week 1 was crazy. Week 2 is going to be equally as crazy. So we want to hit on the matchups. We're going to just skip by some of the matchups, the matchups we don't really want to focus on. And we'll just go ahead and start with one. That's Texans at Panthers, Andrew.
Yeah, like you said, this is not a game you want to focus on. There's really no one that I'm looking to play from this game. You can maybe play Greg Olsen, looking for a bounce back. He'll probably go pretty low owned after his 1 catch outing last week. He did have a touchdown called back on a questionable pass interference call. But,
very questionable pass interference call.
So that would have salvaged his week a little bit, but unfortunately he didn't get it. So people will probably be off him this week, but I'm not looking to play him.
Okay, 49ers at Steelers, Adam.
Yeah, this is one of the more interesting spots, I think, because everybody wants to play Carlos Hyde at 5,100. I just don't know about the spot for San Francisco. Everybody left them for dead on Monday night. Nobody expected them to beat the Vikings, and they go out and play, I think, at their optimal level. Like, they played their peak performance on Monday night, and then to have to go across the country on a short week to play the 1 a.m. Eastern game. Where are they going to play? They're not going to be at their peak level. Are they going to be at 80% of their peak? Are they going to be at 50%? I think this could be a spot where they're down at 40 or 30 or 20% of their peak way their offense runs. So Carlos Hyde, a 2 down back as a 6-point underdog scares me a lot, even at 5,100. Now, the only reason that I'm not completely fading him is because he's 5,100, but I do think that there's room for pause on Carlos Hyde this week.
He's going to be a very popular option after that Monday night game. Peter, do you agree that you want to kind of give a pause as far as Hyde goes?
Yeah, especially in GPPs and cash games, I still think there's merit. I do not like taking running backs as big dogs, but the nice thing is they are facing Pittsburgh, which I'm not scared of that defense at all. So I do think that he's intriguing for cash games and not, I think he's definitely a good option. For tournaments, though, I think he's a great fade, and definitely you should give a lot of pause when you're only making a couple lineups because he's going to be high owned, and like Adam said, he's probably not going to be involved much on third down, which kind of lowers his ceiling and lowers his floor. So I definitely think there's merit to fading him in GPPs.
Yeah, and it seems like we talked a little bit off camera. It seems like this week with the strategy of things, like there are more cheaper running backs, and you have to kind of play those cheaper running backs if you want to get to those expensive wide receivers. And Andrew, one of those guys is Antonio Brown. I mean, you're talking about a guy that has he did get a little bit of late game production in week one, and Pete was there for that, but you can't deny his ability to just catch a lot of passes.
Yeah, that's not the first time he's piled on some stats in garbage time. He's just a guy that basically no matter what is putting up big numbers every single week. I think that he's a cut above all the other elite wide receivers just in his consistency. And really, I mean, his upside is just as high as anyone else. He's just a guy that really I start my lineups with every week, and this week's no different. It's a good matchup, and I think that he'll get a few more targets this week. Last week, Heath Miller got peppered. I don't expect Heath Miller to continue to get that many targets. So I look for maybe a few more to come towards Antonio, and I think he's a fantastic play this week.
Yeah, both had 11 targets. Heath Miller, I do think is an interesting option. Adam, do you agree? I mean, you look at where his price point is, you can save a lot of money.
Yeah, obviously no Martavis Bryant, no Le'Veon Bell. So I think in situations like that, Ben likes to look to Heath Miller. And I do think, like I already talked about, that Pittsburgh is going to play really well in this game. I don't know that it will be with D'Angelo Williams. I do think it'll be with the pass game. So I definitely think Heath Miller is in play. I mean, there's so many of the cheap tight ends that played well in week one that are still cheap in week two.
All right, next game, Bucks at Saints. This game has fantasy goodness written all over it, and a lot of people, Peter, are on the Saints this week. Your thoughts on Breeze as being a pretty good play?
Yeah, definitely on the Saints this week. Love Drew Brees. Love the Brandon Cooks bounce back week. Really high on him. There's merit to Thomas. There's a merit to a lot of guys. I think the most popular play will end up being Mark Ingram, who I like a lot as well. I think he's a pretty good play and definitely someone I probably prefer to hide at 5,900. And then in addition to that, I think you can go back to the Bucs a little bit. I think a lot of people will go back to Safarian Jenkins after the big week he had in week one. I think you should give a little bit of pause to that just because the return of Mike Evans will probably limit his red zone looks. But I do think there's merit to still playing him. And then I think there's definitely merit to playing Vincent Jackson and or Mike Evans because they're going to be probably playing from behind. So fantasy goodness all over this game, and I really don't have any problems with any of the major plays.
Yeah, my question is, if CJ Spiller is active, are we still all in on Mark Ingram?
I don't think you can be.
They said that they're going to ease him into the game.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think CJ Spiller takes more away from Kiri Robinson, and he only maybe eases in with a few touches. It's just it makes Mark Ingram a little bit scarier for me. I don't know how much to downgrade Mark Ingram. I'm not going to do it a lot, but I don't know how much to downgrade him.
Yeah, that 3-down mini Forte back, I just don't think is there with Spiller in there. But I mean, part of that is us not knowing as far as third down back who's going to be in there. Ingram, though, does have. I mean, I feel like all those Saints have a pretty good chance to put up a lot of points this week. Andrew, we were just talking about the Tampa Bay side. Does Mike Evans scare you at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Anytime you're dealing with the hamstring, you just don't really know. But he's probably going to go under-owned because of that. And he had a couple monster games that certainly won people GPPs last year. Winston looked pretty terrible, but mostly at the start of the game, I thought he looked a little bit better as the game went on. And, of course, Safarian Jenkins had a big game. So he's able to get the ball to his receivers and potentially for them to put up big games. So for GPPs, I like potentially pairing Winston with any one of those guys. because they're not going to go owned, and they can go off at any time.
All right, Lions at Vikings. You're talking about running back who, like, first touch last week, just took it to the house, Amir Abdullah. Peter, your thoughts on this Lions offense?
Yeah, I love Amir Abdullah. I hope they get Abdullah off the kickoff returns. It does create that double dip scenario that we love in daily fantasy, but as a huge Amir Abdullah fan, both in college and now in the pros, I do not want to see him get killed on a kickoff. But yeah, he definitely has a lot of fantasy goodness here. Want to see his touches continue to go up before I feel really comfortable with him in cash games, but certainly a viable play. And then Calvin's got to bounce. Calvin's going to have a big game here soon. He has to. So that's really my thoughts there. I think the more interesting thing is what's going to happen with Minnesota. Everyone off, probably going to be off AP after the disappointing week 1 performance. Curious thoughts on him. And then also the passing game, which normally has been very good against Detroit because they're so good at stopping the run.
Yeah, I would normally be all in on an Adrian Peterson bounce back. It's like the perfect DFS kind of game theory thing. Everybody has a guy and he busts, then you take him the next week when nobody's on him. My concern is that the Lions have been arguably the best run defense in the league for the last year. And that scares me from an Adrian Peterson perspective. Normally, the way you beat the Lions defense is through the air. I'm definitely going to have some Charles Johnson and some Mike Wallace in my tournament lineups. I'm not really finding my way onto AP this week, even though he's going to be super low owned.
Yeah, AP is it feels like radioactive after week 1. A lot of people invested in him, and he just seems like that Vikings offense, that offensive line, Peter, not what you want when you're paying such a high price tag for a guy.
Yeah. You all were depressed Monday night watching Hyde crush souls and AP look abysmal. So I think that has a lot to do with the offensive line. I still believe in AP's talent. I'm not worried about him specifically. But you got to pass protect and you got to be able to open up lanes for running. And, the offensive line looked bad versus San Francisco. It's probably going to look pretty bad versus Detroit.
Yeah, next game we've got the Cardinals at Bears, and a lot of people on the Cards this week, Adam.
I'm not. Yeah, I from what I've been hearing, the sharp guys, the top 0.01 or 0.5% of sports bettors are on Chicago in a big way this week. And anytime I hear something like that, and everybody in the public wants to take the Cardinals, but the line's not moving, it's been hovering around 2. That really scares me. And I know that the Bears have an atrocious defense, and on paper, Carson Palmer should absolutely shred the back end of this Bears defense. I'm just not seeing. I don't know. John Brown, the volume is a concern for me. Larry Fitzgerald being 1 foot in the grave is a concern for me. Michael Floyd coming back and playing more snaps this week is a concern. And Chris Johnson, haven't been able to play good football in the last 6 years is a concern too. For me, the more better players are on the Chicago side. They'll be sneakier. We know how bad Arizona is against tight ends. I think Martellus Bennett is a great play. And I think Alshon Jeffrey, who was able to practice in full this week after clearly not being 100% last week, I think Alshon Jeffrey wins a matchup against Patrick Peterson this week.
Look at you being all contrarian, Mr. Levitan. Does anybody else want to give a little bit of rebuttal for that Cardinals offense?
Well, I mean, look, the Bears can't stop anyone, so I'm pretty high on them. I think
spoken as a Bears fan.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of the Bears, sadly, and they're not stopping anyone. So I think Fitzgerald's a good play. I'm not too confident in Chris Johnson, so I can see him in the red zone throwing. Larry Fitzgerald's a good red zone target. He had, I think, 8 targets last week, just kind of a typical Larry Fitz game, 6 for 90 yards or so. So you tack on a touchdown to that, and that's a pretty good game. Definitely see them doing that again. And then, like Adam said, on the Bears side, I like Bennett a lot. Forte should catch a lot of passes. I think they'll probably struggle to run against Arizona's tough run D. You can see a lot of dump-off passes, kind of like what you saw with the Saints last week, where I think Ingram caught 9 balls. So Forte might have something similar. You might have a bunch of short passes to Bennett, and Alshon's healthy. He got a lot of targets last week, so maybe he converts this week.
Peter, John Brown, does that name strike confidence in you for this upcoming week?
He's a great GPP play pretty much every week. I think more people are on him than everyone else just because I scored the early touchdown last week. He was pretty popular last week. The price went up significantly on DraftKings, which makes me a little hesitant. But as a GPP play, got to take a guy who can bust an 80-yard touchdown at any point in time. And we know the Cardinals want to throw downfield. So definitely in play for me. And I think these guys hit really on the big plays. I think Forte and Bennett are the elite plays for me, especially Forte. I think he's going to be a PPR monster in this game. Like you talked about, I think Ingram had 8 for 90 receiving, and Forte is the best pass-catching running back in the NFL. So I see a huge game from him.
Yeah, and I'm going to admit I've got Carson Palmer in some cash games. So Adam definitely made me a little bit nervous about that.
Don't be nervous about that. I'm not too nervous about that.
Okay. All right. I see you, Pete. All right, let's go on to the next games. The guy that, Adam, you were not nervous about last week, Tyrod Taylor, had a great first half. Game script kind of made that second half not so great, but still at a pretty cheap price tag. Your thoughts about Tyrod Taylor's and his Patriots versus Bills matchup?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if the Colts showed up in that game offensively, Tyrod Taylor would have had 30 DraftKings points without an issue. He had 14.9 in the first half, doing everything that we saw him capable of doing in the preseason. Nobody is going to be on him this week. His price has gone up 1,200. If you just look at his game log, he only had 16 points, but we know why he only had 16 points. Obviously, the Patriots are a much tougher matchup, but for me, it's all about his legs. I mean, how many quarterbacks in the league can you realistically project for 50 rushing yards as a floor every week? And I think Tyrod is going to have 100-yard rushing games this season. When will it be? I'm not sure, but it could be this week, and I'm not going to be on Tyrod Taylor in a GPP this week and miss out because he's going to be like 1 or 2 or 3% owned or something like that, and I would not be surprised at all if he ran for 80 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is to Gronk or not to Gronk here in cash games. I think it's a tough matchup. I'm going to be avoiding people against Buffalo all year long. We saw what Andrew Luck, who I think is the GOAT fantasy quarterback right now, he struggled against them. So I'm nervous about any Patriots player going into Buffalo. Definitely agree with Adam on Tyrod. I mean, the guy just looks incredible, and he's going to bust a couple long rushing touchdowns this year, which really boosts his ceiling and makes him a great GPP play pretty much every week. So I don't have too much exposure overall to this game. I'll definitely have Gronkowski in tournaments. Just don't want to fade him completely. But for me, it's him, and then it's Tyrod, and that's basically it.
It felt like Gronk, when compared to the rest of the tight ends, is pretty expensive, Andrew. But then when you compare him to the top-end wide receivers, it seems like he's a bargain. Where do you lie on Gronk this week?
I'm going to be avoiding him. Look, you always got to be thinking about the prices. And you talk about Tyrod. I think he's got a heck of a lot of upside, and he's going to go under-owned. But his price is just too expensive. You can go 500 more to Palmer, 700 more to Bradford. Those are options I prefer. The tight end, it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you're going to compare him against the receivers, I still think Gronk's coming up a little bit short just because the matchup is so bad. Buffalo was number one at limiting tight end fantasy output last year. Their defense looked incredible last week. It's just, I don't think you need to go there. And there are a bunch of really cheap tight end options like Bennett, Miller, some of the guys we mentioned. We'll get to Witten. Those are all guys that I prefer at the tight end position.
Very nice. All right, Chargers at Bengals. And Adam, I'll start with you as far as your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I mean, I think the Bengals have an underrated defense. You could see the Chargers struggling in this game to run the football with Melvin Gordon. I think if you're going to beat the Bengals, you're going to have to throw the ball, but it's not a great matchup for them, especially at the corner position. And even at slot corner with Leon Hall, the Bengals are pretty stout. So I'm not chasing Stevie Johnson, really. I'm hard-pressed to chase on Keenan Allen, even though I like him in general. I'm not finding myself on a ton of plays in this game. I don't want to get on the Eifert train a week late. I mean, I had 0 of him last week, which was pretty awful, but I'm not going to chase it and try to get back on him this week, especially when I think the coverage could shift towards him and leave A.J. Green more open. So if I'm going to play anybody from this game, it'll probably be Jeremy Hill and A.J. Green.
Peter?
Same take, basically. I think Jeremy Hill is definitely a viable play, and I'm looking for a bounce back from AJ Green. Was not on him really to start last week, and then I started just adding more and more AJ Green, both the tournaments and cash games, and that really bit me. So
I think it was Andrew, because I did the same thing. I think it was Andrew's confidence in AJ last week.
Well, he's also gone off every week in week one, and I remember 2 years ago. He was the guy you had to have, and it just no one was talking about him. He's an elite receiver, and I thought that I thought he'd have a good game. One little tidbit of inside info: talked to Adam Schefter, and he loves Andy Dalton, AJ Green this week. So I think that's a good play right there.
To be fair with Dalton and AJ Green, he dropped a sure touchdown that he would.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so bad that
that was brutal.
That was so
it's a different story. He also got open and got overthrown earlier in the game, and then the game script just got out of hand, which was a bit of a concern. But it was only a 3-point line, so I thought it would be a more competitive game. But the way it played out, that wasn't good for AJ.
On the opposite side of the ball, you've got Woodhead at 4K, which is definitely an interesting option on DraftKings. For me at that price tag, like I said, if you're going for some of those higher end wide receivers and even Gronk, he's a good fill-in option. And then you also have Keenan Allen, Stevie Jones as two guys, Adam, that kind of emerged last week. Your thoughts on Keenan Allen? Are we just pretty much calling that a fluke with all those targets?
Yeah, I don't think it's a fluke. That's going to be their offense, the short passing game, and that's where Keenan Allen wins, kind of similar to where Jarvis Landry wins and Ryan Tannehill throws the ball. I don't think it's a fluke. I just think it's a much, much more difficult matchup. And when you play Detroit, you attack their corners. You don't try to run the ball. But when you play Cincinnati, like I said, it's going to be tough, I think, to throw underneath on Leon Hall and those guys. Keenan Allen is not cheap. I prefer Brandon Cooks if I'm going in that 7K range at wide receiver.
All right, let's move on to the next game. We got Titans and Browns. This one's kind of an ugly one. Pete, I'll give you the honor of taking this game.
Oh, thanks, Dave. There's no one to play in this game except maybe the defenses, and that's really it. I'm not going to chase Mariota. I'm not going to chase Kendall Wright, and I'm certainly not going to play anyone from the Browns. So I'm on the defenses, and that's it.
Not even a little Johnny football?
No Johnny football.
No.
I've been down that path before.
Peter, last year in week 15, Peter asked me who he should play in one huge tournament, and I told him he should go with Johnny Manziel in week 15 against the Bengals. He had -3 points.
It was a bad day.
Stinks. My fiance still gives me grief about that one. So.
it was a bad day for sure.
When you're getting made fun of by your fiance about fantasy football, you know you're in trouble.
Falcons at Giants, Adam. This one is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I think behind Dallas, Philly, this is the most interesting game for me. I'm concerned that it's kind of a letdown spot for Atlanta. They upset Philly on Monday night again, short week, up to the Giants, who should be up for this game after they completely threw that game against Dallas away. That said, the line is only 2. It's projected to be close. One of my favorite plays in this game is Tevin Coleman, who thoroughly outplayed Devontae Freeman, outsnapped him very badly, outtouched him 2-1, outproduced him on a yards per carry and yards after contact per attempt, and also ran about the same number of routes that Devontae Freeman ran. So Tevin Coleman has a reputation as a big playback, but an ability to also grind and kind of get the first and second down carries is big for Tevin Coleman's value. I think that he'll get at least 14 touches in this game, maybe 18. And given his style, at some point in those 14 to 18 touches, he's a reasonable bet to just go ham for a 60-yarder because that's just what he does. That's what he did at Indiana. I think that's what he will do in the pros. So at 4,500, I think Tevin Coleman is a very, very strong play. And quickly on the other side of the ball, everybody's going to be on Julio. Everybody's going to be on Antonio Brown. I think it's a really nice bounce back spot for Odell Beckham in tournaments. And I honestly don't even hate Odell Beckham in cash if you're afraid of Julio's hamstring or something like that.
Andrew, are you afraid of Julio Jones' hamstring? I mean, he went ham, no pun intended, the first game. So does that give you any pause for like not using him in cash games?
We'll see what they say today, but the word yesterday was that he was fine. They're just holding out precautionary reasons and that he's supposed to practice in full. Today's Friday. So assuming he practices today, I think I'll feel comfortable. And Shanahan's down there now, and it was clear that they were going to try and get the ball in Julio's hands. There were a lot of short passes, and they mixed in the deep passes as well. So the whole game plan was around getting Julio highly involved. It worked. So I would expect them to do the same. And I like Julio a lot. I prefer Antonio, but I'm going to try and play both of them if I can.
Peter.
Yeah. One last comment here on Tevin Coleman. Guy busted 50-yard plus runs at Indiana when their team was just terrible. They would still run with him when they were down 2-3 touchdowns. As a daily fantasy college football running back, he was as good as it got last year. And, he was doing it against some pretty good competition too. And he has elite breakaway speed, and he has elite, that one cut to kind of blow by the defense. So I'm with Adam. That's a guy that I really like this week.
What about Matt Ryan on the road? Stay away?
I don't think it's a stay away. I think he's definitely in play for GPPs. For cash games, I'm looking elsewhere.
All right, let's go from a good game to a mad game. Adam, I'll give you this game, and it's Rams at Redskins. Like, what do you do there?
Yeah, I think the Redskins are actually going to show up in this game. Another home dog spot with a team off an emotional upset, and the Redskins off a loss. I think they show up. It's just such a bad matchup, like the league's best defensive line against an atrocious Redskins offensive line. I don't know what to do. I don't really want to play St. Louis defense. I know everybody wants to play St. Louis defense, and Kirk Cousins is a turnover machine, and the Rams are going to create a ton of pressure. I don't want to play St. Louis defense, but I understand why they're a very, very popular play. I guess I can't really hate on that. The only guy I guess I'm considering this game is Jordan Reed, but I don't know. He dinged his quad, and St. Louis is very good against tight ends, so I'm trying to get up to Martellus Bennett if I can, instead of staying down with Reed.
Why don't you like the Rams defense? Because I like them a lot. Obviously, they're at home, or sorry, the Rams are on the road. But
yeah, I prefer to use defenses at home. And when I think a team is going to win a game, like I think the Redskins are going to win this game, I usually don't use the other defense. But I do think that you can make a case that even if the Redskins win, that they're a good bet to turn the ball over 1 or 2 times, and definitely Kirk Cousins is going to take sacks and most likely turn the ball over.
You also have you talked about Jordan Reed with nicked up hamstring. Deshaun Jackson's not going to be playing. Pierre Garçon is like the one guy other than Reed that was looking at this game, just because his price tag is really cheap. So if you want to gamble with little Pierre Garçon, go for it. Next game, Dolphins at Jags, and we were talking a little bit off camera about Lamar Miller. And it seems like we're all kind of we're not really sure what to think. Andrew, I'll go with you first as far as all the love you have for Lamar Miller this week.
Yeah, well, look, we were talking off camera because I'm a little bit lost at running back this week, so I was trying to bounce some ideas off you guys and see where you're at, because I think it's difficult. There's really all of the running backs in that price range have their warts, and same with the expensive backs. So Miller, he's at least in a situation where they're the favorite. He's getting all the touches as far as I think they had like 18 runs last week. He had 13 of them, but a couple of them went to Tannehill, and I think there was only one other run from another running back. So it seems to be his job. Last week was a little bit of a weird game. I expect them to control the game this week, and so if he's getting close to 20 touches, I think he's going to pay off that price tag. But of course, he comes with risk, just like all the guys in that price range. Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I think he's a great threat to catch the ball a couple times too. And, they're a big favorite going against Jacksonville. So, I mean, I think Jacksonville's better against the run than most people think. But, there's certainly a lot of value in taking him. And I think Miami can definitely force some turnovers in this game and put him in a good spot to score. So I definitely think he's a viable play. And he's certainly, a good price as well. So I think he's a definitely intriguing guy, and I think also you have to look at Jarvis Landry and Miami D, and you could even go for the double dip there with those two that we saw work really well last week.
Yeah, Adam, Jarvis Landry, obviously that Miami offense was not in sync week 1. Jarvis Landry, does he scare you at all using him this week?
No, and I mean, he's still pretty cheap relative to his role. Against the Redskins, it's kind of similar to Detroit. They're much easier to throw against than to run against. And Jacksonville isn't quite as severe as a split that way. But like Pete said, I think they're a little bit underrated against the run. So I would be shocked if Jarvis Landry didn't get 8 or 9 more targets in this game. Yeah, they're all going to be within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, but he has some yak ability. And I definitely think that Jarvis Landry is on my list for cash games.
Yeah, same here. Well, let's move on, though. We'll stay with you, Adam, and talk about basically 1, maybe 2 plays in this Ravens at Raiders game, and it's on the Baltimore side.
Yeah, I'm not a Justin Forsett guy by any stretch, but I do think this is a good spot for him. Against Denver, at Denver is a very, very, very difficult spot. I think we talked about that last week. I'm not going to be playing guys when they're in Denver, but going up to Oakland, I think it's going to loosen up a ton for Justin Forsett, tons of checkdowns and tons of runs. He's only 6,200. I do prefer Mark Ingram, but I think pairing Ingram and Forsett is definitely a way that a lot of people are going to go.
All right, we'll move on to the three latest games. Again, are 3 games that are going to provide a lot of excitement. So people that are sweating games around 4 Eastern, just know that there's a lot more stuff to come. And one of those games is the Cowboys at Eagles. We're talking about a lot of points, Peter, but no Dez Bryant this week.
Yeah, and I thought Al made a really good reference on our podcast yesterday, kind of an analogy that really makes a lot of sense to me. Kind of compared it to an NBA game where you have a team playing up in pace, you have a team playing down in pace, versus their opponent. Obviously the Eagles play faster than anyone, get more plays off, which is great for Dallas. And, the Eagles, while they're going to get a lot of plays off, they're going against Dallas, who still has found a way to kind of bleed the clock. So for me, I'm liking the Dallas guys a little bit more at this point in time. I think all the pass catchers are in play. Love Romo this week. I'm also still liking the Eagles guys. I think Bradford, Jordan Matthews are good plays. I think Nelson Aguilar is going to be an elite tournament play. I definitely think there's also a little narrative street here with DeMarco Murray going back. So lots of interesting stuff, and the highest scoring game, or at least expected to be the highest scoring game on the week. So this is loaded with fantasy goodness, and I really have no problems with basically any of the plays in this game.
Not sure about narrative street because he doesn't seem like he has a chip on his shoulder. He's just like, I don't care.
The narrative on top of the narrative. So he has a narrative street, but the narrative, he's not an angry guy.
Right. He's not out for revenge, basically.
Yeah. Chip Kelly always likes to stick it to people, though. So
that running back situation in Philly while we were watching Monday night is going to be interesting. You've got one guy needed DeMarco Murray there at the end, and they sent in Ryan Matthews to vulture the touchdown. And let's not even talk about the Bradford to Jordan Matthews touchdown.
Oh my gosh!
Not even review. A lot of money was lost on that. So. We won't even talk about it, but Andrew, your thoughts on this Philly offense?
Yeah, like Pete said, they're going to be playing down in pace, so I'm a little bit concerned about them just getting less plays off, Dallas running the clock out, but they're projected to score 30 points, which is the highest of any team this week. I think Matthews and Bradford are going to be 2 of the highest owned players on the slate, so I'll probably be looking other places for GPPs, but they're very viable cash games. I'm kind of debating Matthews versus Cooks in that price range. I think I might prefer Cooks, but either are good plays. As far as Dallas, Witten, Beasley, Terrence Williams, I think are all great plays. There's a little bit of risk. You just don't know quite how it's going to be distributed, but they're also cheap that I think in cash games are all viable plays.
Yeah, Witten's the man at the tight end position if you're not using Gronk for me, but I want to get your guys' quick opinion. Obviously, a lot of things can change between now and Sunday, but if you had to choose now, Cole Beasley or Terrence Williams, who is it, Andrew?
T-Will.
Peter?
Oh, yeah, Terrence Williams, especially for tournaments. Cole Beasley's price is probably a little more attractive for cash games.
Adam?
Yeah, that was a bad question, Dave. It's obviously T-Will.
Okay, I'm just gonna scratch out I'm gonna scratch out all my Cole Beasley shares because
he's cheap, Dave. Don't scratch him off.
What do you guys think about this other guy, Devin Street? Or I think that's his name. Like, how involved is he going to be? Does that hurt any of these other players? Adam, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I actually used Devin Street in preseason one week, and he screwed me, even though he played a lot of snaps in a really good spot in the preseason. So he can consider himself dead to me. The guy they signed, Bryce Butler, from the Raiders, would be more intriguing. If he was starting, I would be on Bryce Butler, big preseason DFS superstar Bryce Butler.
If Street could put up some of those University of Pittsburgh games, Peter, it'd be nice, but I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I'm obviously intrigued by the name, but it's kind of like playing. It's too tricky. I think that even with the main guys, Beasley, Terrence Williams, Witten, you're still wondering how the targets are going to be distributed. Start factoring in Street and Butler. I haven't even heard about, so now I got to look at him a little bit. It starts getting tricky for me, so I'm going to stick with those first three, and even Escobar. What do you guys think about him?
That I'm not too high on backup tight ends.
Yeah. I think they'll play two tight end way more, and Gavin Escobar runs like, a man, whereas Jason Witten runs like a dad. So I don't think it's the worst play I've ever heard, but I'm with Dave that number 2 tight ends don't really find their way onto my roster.
I forgot about Escobar. He's going to be the James Jones of this week 100% now. He'll catch 2 or 3 touchdowns. Everyone's going to have all the other guys, and they'll come up empty.
It just
name drop one more time. That was another guy Schefter said. So.
Who, Escobar?
Yeah, he said his sources in Dallas were saying a lot of 2 tight end sets. So.
Ask him what his sources say about who Darrelle Revis is going to cover on Monday night.
All right.
All right, we'll get to that game 1 second. Seahawks at Packers first, because that Revis question is a very important question. But Seahawks at Packers, you've got Marshawn Lynch, probably going to be the heaviest owned running back this week. Adam, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think of the top tier of running backs, Marshawn Lynch is the best play. Everybody else has kind of a tough matchup or is in a low total. I normally do not use Marshawn Lynch away from Seattle, but I think that this is a good spot for him against a pretty soft Green Bay defense. The play in this game for me, I almost don't want to say it because I don't want to give it away, but my favorite GPP play of the week is Russell Wilson. I think that he's just going to come up and they're going to rely on him extremely heavily in a game where their team total is way, way up. This game has an over-under of 49 and only a 3-point spread. And I do not think Russell Wilson will be owned very highly at all as people kind of go to Carson Palmer and Drew Brees and Sam Bradford. So definitely main GPP core play for me is Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Russell Wilson is definitely an interesting play. He's a guy that has a high upside, I feel like. On the other side of the ball, Peter, you've got
Devontae Adams all in for tournaments. I think he's prime bounce back. Everyone was on him. Everyone gets off him. I think he could definitely be a guy in tournaments who does really well. James Jones, if he burns me again, it's going to be bad, but I'm probably not going to have too much exposure to him.
All right. Andrew, your thoughts on Eddie Lacy and this Packers offense?
I probably won't have a ton of Lacy. I like Devontae Adams a lot, just like Pete. They're saying that Sherman's going to be on Cobb in the slot. I don't know how much, but if he ends up spending most of the game on Cobb, it's really going to open it up for James Jones and Devontae. And I think everyone's going to be off Devontae this week. So it seems like the bounce back situation of the week to me. And the Packers, they're projected to score points. So it's not a matchup you love, but I think that'll scare a lot of people away, and Aaron Rodgers can score on anyone.
A lot of points in this game last year in Seattle in the divisional, or not the divisional, in the NFC Championship. So something to be aware of for sure.
In that game, the first game of the year last year, they put Boykin on Sherman's side, and I think he had 0 catches, and the other receivers actually all had pretty good lines. So kind of just attack whoever Sherman's not on.
Yeah, and that's kind of the question, is figuring out what those shutdown corners, who they're going to be on. And in the next game, we just talked about it right before this, Adam, is Darrelle Revis. Who is he going to cover? Because it's like whoever he's going to cover, you want to take the other guy. And now you've got T.Y. Hilton saying that he might be playing on Monday night, which is an interesting wrinkle in this wide receiver scenario that we're talking about for the Colts.
Yeah, and this is getting super complicated and confusing. That's why, Peter needs to be texting Adam Schefter for us. The confusing part is even if T.Y. Hilton plays, I'm not necessarily convinced that Darrelle Revis will cover T.Y. Hilton. Darrelle Revis has often stayed off of the smaller, shiftier receivers. And also the Colts could just throw T.Y. Hilton out there as a decoy to be like, hey, put Revis on Hilton. And then he could just, be a total decoy and just hobble around out there. And then Darrelle Revis will be wasted. So I really, really don't know what to do. The ideal scenario for me is T.Y. Hilton gets ruled out. Adam Schefter tells Peter that Darrelle Revis will be on Andre Johnson, and then we get all the Moncrief at 4,600. That would be the ideal situation for me.
Yeah, Moncrief, like you said, at 4,600. And he's the guy, like if I'm targeting anybody, it's him. But Peter, you like you some Andrew Luck. Like you've never shied away from that opinion. So Andrew Luck, I want to know, is he okay for cash games? If someone wants to put him in a cash game this week, is he okay?
I mean, it pains me to say I probably wouldn't play Andrew Luck in cash games as much as I love him and as much as I think he will go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. I can't quite put him into cash games with uncertainty of T.Y. Hilton and a tough matchup, but he is an elite GPP play in my eyes. I can definitely see him putting up some big numbers, and the nice thing about him relative to a lot of these other elite passers, I guess Aaron Rodgers kind of in a similar category, is that he can get it in with his legs. So I just think he's going to be the number one fantasy quarterback this year. I'm really looking forward to playing him after these first two tough matchups. But even against the Jets at home, certainly think he has the capability to be the highest scoring quarterback on the week. So he's an elite GPP play in my mind, and we just need to figure out which target to pair him with. And I guess you could roll a naked Andrew Luck out there and just hope he gets a rushing touchdown.
He definitely likes to call his own number, so likes to pad those stats. Andrew Luck would be a fun sweat. Having a guy on Monday night is always interesting when you're chasing down the leaders or chasing down the head-to-head. Andrew, I want to know on the opposite side of the ball, are you scared away from the Jets getting down early and going away from Chris Ivory? Because he looked really good last week.
Yeah, I am. And we already talked about there's warts with all these running backs. I like Ivory a lot. I like his price. It's a 7-point spread. And if they get way behind, I'm not sure he's going to be in there. Could be Powell trying to play the catch-up. So it scares me, but I think he's probably a risk we're taking in some spots. And as far as the receivers, we've talked a lot about these elite corners. I think Vontae Davis is going to be on Brandon Marshall, which should open it up for Eric Decker to potentially have a good game. He's always a great GPP play. He goes off when you least expect it. I think he'll be pretty low owned. His price is good. I believe he's $5K or $5,100. So Decker is kind of a sneaky play in my eyes.
Yeah, you guys on the Decker as far as he's got a pretty good matchup this week.
We talked about it yesterday, and that's a guy that we're all on. I thought I was the only one thinking that way, and then these smart people mentioned Decker as well. I think he's clearly the guy. I think we'll see that a lot this year versus the Colts. I think Vontae Davis is turning into basically a mini Darrelle Revis, or even equaling him in terms of what he does to shut people down. And that two receiver, I think, is going to put up some big numbers consistently against this Colts team.
Yep.
Yeah. Toller out, Darius Butler only 5'10", and so you could see some red zone targets out of Decker. I like him as well, guys. That's it. We're done with week 2. I felt like that was pretty easy, and we got it done in time. Appreciate all you guys being on the show. As far as like one game that in particular that you guys are looking forward to in this game by game breakdown. If you had one game to focus on, what would it be?
Atlanta and the Giants.
Andrew?
I think the Cowboys-Eagles game is going to swing the most this weekend as far as the DFS landscape, because I think that'll be the most heavily owned game. So I'm intrigued to see how that plays out, and I'll probably be probably a little bit underexposed to it and kind of scared as we roll into the afternoon games.
Peter?
Yeah, I'm on both those games, so I'll go with a little bit different direction here. I'm looking at the Cardinals-Bears game, and I think Wiggins might be pretty happy on Sunday here. So I'm looking at that game.
And I'm going Cowboys-Eagles. We're all.
That's what I was going to say too, by the way, and then didn't want to be a copycat, Dave.
Thank you, Peter. All right. Well, thank you, Peter Jennings. Thank you, Adam Levitan, and thank you, Andrew Wiggins. I'm Socrdave, David Kitchen. And remember, $10 million Millie Maker this week going down. Lots of other guaranteed contests there on DraftKings. We'll be having the Hangout Show on Sunday night and also the Sweat Show live from Boston on Monday night. So that will be fun. So make sure you're tuning in. YouTube.com/DraftKings TV, and make sure to follow on Twitter at DraftKings. And guys, good luck in your matchups, and we'll see you later.